You're standing in front of the mirror. You look at yourself and you say it. I am confident. I am worthy. I am enough. You say it with conviction. You say it like you mean it. But inside, there's a voice, a quiet voice that says, no, you're not. And somehow, after the affirmation, you feel worse. Not better. Worse. More aware of the gap. More conscious of the lie. More convinced that you're exactly what you're trying to affirm you're not. This happens to millions of people every day. They repeat positive affirmations, hoping to reprogram their minds, hoping to manifest a better reality, hoping to finally believe the words they're saying. But instead of feeling empowered, they feel more powerless. Instead of feeling worthy, they feel more inadequate. Instead of confidence rising, self-doubt deepens. And nobody talks about this, because admitting that affirmations make you feel worse sounds like you're doing them wrong, sounds like you're not positive enough, sounds like you're blocking your own blessings. So you keep doing them, keep saying the words, keep trying to believe, and keep feeling worse. But here's what's actually happening. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Affirmations don't make you feel worse because you're broken, or because you're not spiritual enough, or because you're doing it wrong. They make you feel worse because of how the mind works, because of a mechanism so fundamental that ignoring it guarantees failure. When you affirm something you don't actually believe, your mind doesn't just accept the new information. It immediately searches for evidence. It checks. It compares. It asks, is this true? And when the answer is no, when your lived experience contradicts the affirmation, the mind doesn't quietly update. It doubles down on the contradiction. Think of it like this. Imagine you're in debt, serious debt, and every morning you stand in your empty apartment and declare, I am financially abundant. Money flows to me easily. I am wealthy. What happens? For a split second, maybe you feel a little lift, a little hope. And then reality crashes back in. The bills are still there. The bank account is still empty. And now, on top of the financial stress, you have the stress of lying to yourself, of knowing that your words don't match your reality, of feeling like even your attempts to help yourself are failures. The affirmation didn't create abundance. It created more awareness of lack. It highlighted the gap between where you are and where you're pretending to be. And that gap, that's where the suffering intensifies. This is the paradox. The thing you affirm becomes the thing you're most aware you don't have. I am confident makes you hyper-aware of your insecurity. I am loved makes you hyper-aware of your loneliness. I am successful makes you hyper-aware of your failures. The affirmation, meant to shift your reality, ends up reinforcing exactly what you're trying to change. And it's not just psychological. There's actual research on this. It's called the ironic process theory. When you try to suppress a thought or impose a thought that contradicts your current belief, your mind has to constantly check whether the unwanted thought is present. And that checking keeps the unwanted thought active. You're trying to think, I'm confident, but to monitor whether you're succeeding, your mind has to keep referencing, I'm not confident. You're reinforcing the negative while trying to install the positive. It's like telling yourself, don't think about a pink elephant. The only way to follow that instruction is to think about a pink elephant to know what you're not supposed to think about. The prohibition creates the presence. The affirmation of what you're not creates the awareness of what you are. But the self-help industry doesn't want you to know this, because affirmations are easy to sell. They're simple. They're actionable. They give people something to do. And when they don't work, the blame goes on the person, not the method. You didn't believe hard enough. You didn't do them consistently enough. You didn't really want it. The method is protected. The person is the problem. So people keep buying the affirmation journals, the mirror clings, the audio recordings. They keep repeating the phrases, and they keep wondering why, despite all this positivity, they feel so negative. Why, despite all this self-love talk, they feel so unlovable. Why, despite declaring their power, they feel so powerless. And here's the cruelest part. The worse affirmations make you feel, the more you're told you need them. You're feeling resistance because you're breaking through old patterns. Keep going. The discomfort means it's working. So you push harder. You affirm more intensely. You try to believe more forcefully. And you feel worse and worse. Because you're not breaking through anything. You're just deepening the war with yourself. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. The fundamental problem with affirmations is that they're built on a lie. Not the content of the affirmation necessarily, but the underlying assumption. The assumption that you need to become something other than what you are. That your current state is wrong and needs to be overwritten. That you're not okay as you are and need to convince yourself otherwise. And that assumption, that's the real problem. Not your confidence or worthiness or abundance. The problem is the belief that you lack these things and need to fake them until you make them. Because as long as you're faking, as long as you're trying to convince yourself of something you don't feel, you're split. Part of you is saying the words. Part of you knows they're not true. And that split, that internal conflict, that's what creates the suffering. Affirmations don't heal the split. They deepen it. They create a performer and an audience. A part that's trying to believe and a part that's watching the performance and judging its authenticity. And the judging part always wins because it has reality on its side. It has your actual lived experience. And no amount of repeating words can override what you actually feel. This doesn't mean positive thinking is useless. It doesn't mean words have no power. It means that trying to impose a belief that contradicts your experience creates more problems than it solves. It means that affirmations work when they reflect something you already feel, not when they're trying to create something you don't. They work as reminders, not as reprogramming, as acknowledgments, not as arguments. When you already feel worthy and you affirm your worth, it resonates. It amplifies what's there. But when you don't feel worthy and you try to affirm your worth, it clashes. It highlights the absence. It makes the unworthiness louder, not quieter. So why do we do this? Why do we keep using affirmations when they so often backfire? Because we're at war. War with how things are. War with how we feel. War with who we think we are. And affirmations are weapons in that war. Tools to fight against reality and install a better version. But here's what nobody tells you. You can't win a war against reality. Reality always wins. And every attempt to fight it just makes you more exhausted, more defeated, more convinced that something is fundamentally wrong with you. Think about what an affirmation actually is. It's a statement about how things should be. deployed against how things are. I am confident when you feel insecure. I am abundant when you feel lacking. I am healed when you feel broken. Each one is a rejection of the present moment, a refusal to accept what is, an insistence that this, right here, right now, is not acceptable. And that rejection, that's the source of suffering, not the insecurity itself, not the lack, not the brokenness, but the refusal to let it be, the fight against it, the insistence that it shouldn't exist. When you affirm, I am confident, you're not just creating confidence. You're simultaneously saying, I shouldn't be insecure. Insecurity is wrong. I need to get rid of it. And that makes the insecurity a problem. Something to fix. Something to be ashamed of. Something that proves you're failing. But what if the insecurity isn't a problem? What if it's just a feeling? A temporary state? A wave passing through? It only becomes a problem when you go to war with it, when you try to override it, when you reject its existence and demand something else in its place. This is why affirmations often make you feel worse, because they're not neutral, they're hostile. They're attacks on your current state. They're saying, what you're feeling right now is unacceptable. You need to be different. You need to be better. You need to convince yourself you're something you're not. And your psyche knows this. It feels the rejection. It feels the judgment. It feels the war being waged against it. And it doesn't respond well. Instead of transforming, it contracts. Instead of opening, it defends. Instead of allowing change, it resists harder. Have you ever noticed this? The more you try to affirm confidence, the more anxious you become. The more you try to affirm abundance, the more aware you are of scarcity. The more you try to affirm love, the more you feel the absence of it. The affirmation creates a target, and your mind becomes hypervigilant, constantly checking whether you're hitting the target. And every time you check, you find you're not. And that failure feels worse than if you'd never tried. This is the trap. The affirmation creates a standard, and then you measure yourself against that standard, and you fail. Over and over. And each failure reinforces the original belief. See, I'm not confident. I'm not worthy. I'm not enough. Even when I try to convince myself otherwise, I can't. I'm hopeless. The affirmation, designed to lift you up, becomes evidence of your inadequacy, proof that even with help, even with tools, even with effort, you still can't get there. You still can't be what you should be. And the self-help world has a response to this. You need to believe it. You need to feel it. You need to embody the affirmation, not just say it. But that's even worse, because now you're not just expected to say words you don't believe. You're expected to feel things you don't feel, to embody states you're not in, to fake it so thoroughly that the fake becomes real. And that's an impossible task. You can't force yourself to feel something you don't feel. You can't manufacture belief through effort. The more you try, the more aware you become that you're trying. And trying means you're not there yet. Trying means you're still the person who needs to become something else. Trying is proof of the gap. So you're stuck. If you just say the affirmations, they don't work because you don't believe them. If you try to believe them, the trying highlights that you don't. If you try to feel them, the effort proves you're not feeling them naturally. No matter what you do, the affirmation becomes a mirror reflecting back your perceived inadequacy. And here's the deeper issue, the real issue. Affirmations are built on the premise that you need to change your thoughts to change your reality, that your thoughts create your experience, that if you just think the right thoughts, feel the right feelings, say the right words, your external reality will shift to match. But that's backwards. Your thoughts don't create reality. They reflect it. You feel insecure, not because you're thinking insecure thoughts. You're thinking insecure thoughts because something in your life or your history or your environment is creating insecurity. And trying to override those thoughts without addressing the root just creates internal conflict. It's like having a smoke alarm going off, and instead of finding the fire, you just cover the alarm with a pillow and repeat, "There is no fire. I am safe. Everything is fine." The alarm keeps going off under the pillow. The fire keeps burning. And now you're not just in danger. You're in danger while pretending you're not, which is worse. Affirmations are the pillow. The feelings you're trying to override are the alarm. And the real situation that created those feelings, that's the fire. And the fire doesn't care what you affirm. It burns regardless. So if affirmations don't work, what does? How do you actually change? How do you move from insecurity to confidence, from lack to abundance, from pain to peace? Not through affirmation, through acknowledgement. Instead of saying, "I am confident" when you're not, you say, "I'm feeling insecure right now." Instead of affirming, "I am abundant" when you feel scarce, you acknowledge, "I'm worried about money." Instead of declaring, "I am healed" when you're hurting, you admit, "This hurts." This sounds like giving up, like surrendering to negativity, like affirming the negative instead of the positive. But it's not. It's something completely different. It's ending the war. When you acknowledge what is, when you stop fighting reality and simply name it, something remarkable happens. The thing you were fighting loses its power, not because it disappears, but because you're not giving it your energy anymore. You're not resisting it. You're not trying to change it. You're just letting it be. And in that letting it be, in that simple recognition of what's true, space opens up. Not space to become something else, just space. Space to breathe. Space to exist without constant self-correction. Space to be what you are without the overlay of what you should be. This is the paradox. The thing you accept begins to transform. Not because you're trying to transform it, but because acceptance removes the resistance that was keeping it locked in place. What you fight persists. What you accept flows. Imagine you're feeling anxious. You can affirm, "I am calm, I am at peace, I am centered." And the anxiety doesn't care. It keeps going. And now you're anxious about being anxious. Or you can simply say, "I'm anxious right now." And something shifts. Not the anxiety necessarily, but your relationship to it. It's no longer the enemy. It's just something happening. A wave, a passing state. And waves pass when you let them. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't negative thinking. This is accurate thinking. This is seeing what is without judgment, without needing it to be different, without making it wrong. And from that place, real change becomes possible. Not forced change, not effortful change, but organic change. When you're not spending all your energy fighting what is, that energy becomes available for something else, for actual movement, for responding to life instead of resisting it. The confidence you couldn't create with affirmations might start showing up naturally. Not because you convinced yourself you're confident, but because you stopped being at war with your insecurity. The abundance you couldn't manifest might start flowing. Not because you declared you're wealthy, but because you stopped the constant anxiety about lack that was blocking your ability to see and receive what's actually here. This is what spiritual traditions have been pointing to for thousands of years. Not positive affirmations, acceptance. Not fighting what is, allowing what is. Not becoming something else, recognizing what you already are beneath the layers of resistance and self-rejection. The irony is brutal. Affirmations try to make you feel better by denying what you feel. Acceptance makes you feel better by allowing what you feel. Affirmations try to change you by rejecting you. Acceptance changes you by accepting you. Affirmations create the problem they're trying to solve. Acceptance solves the problem by removing the fight. This doesn't mean you stay stuck. It doesn't mean you resign yourself to suffering. It means you stop adding suffering to suffering. Stop adding the war to the pain. The pain might still be there, but without the war, it's just pain. And pain, when you stop fighting it, moves through, changes, transforms. Not because you demanded it transform, but because that's what everything does when you stop holding it in place with resistance. So forget the affirmations. Forget the mirror declarations. Forget the vision boards and the manifestation journals and the fake it till you make it mantras. Just be honest. Just acknowledge what's actually happening, what you're actually feeling, what's actually true. Not what should be true, not what you want to be true, what is true. And watch what happens. Not immediately, not magically, but gradually, quietly, genuinely. The thing you were fighting starts to relax. The person you were trying to become starts to feel less necessary. And the person you already are, the awareness that's been here all along, starts to come forward. Not as achievement, not as transformation, just as recognition. You were never broken. You were just at war, and peace was always an option. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, "I accept what is." Write it as your declaration of peace. Nobody